Hello and welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm Ed Piskor.
Going to look at a classic from Wildstorm, 1997. Adam Warren writing and drawing Gen 13 Bootleg, three-part Grunge the Movie, three-parter. So this is going to be a fun one to dive into, but before we crack these, Ed, how about Red Room update?
Red Room Comics, Murder on the Dark Web for Fun and Profit is the name of the game in the Red Room universe, Jimmy, and there are 4 issues of the Antisocial Network on the stands as we speak. Each issue completely self-contained, so if you see an issue, grab an issue. It tells you a complete story. You like that issue? Well, then go get another one, man, and you're going to get a bigger glimpse into the world of Red Room that I'm constructing. In early November, we're going to be putting out this Red Room Antisocial Network trade paperback, man. Next time you and I get together for a recording session, I might have books in hand, actually, man. So it's gonna be rip roaring, ready to go, with about 70 pages of extra stuff, including a director commentary, sketchbook section, a first draft of a quick and dirty, kind of quickly drawn version of Red Room, and you're going to be able to scoop this up. It's going to be very valuable on top of the issues that you already got your hands on. If you are excited for more Red Room, I'm beginning serialization for the next wave on my Patreon. In fact, we're into it already, man. It's going to be called Trigger Warning, and the first issue is the Rat Queens issue. You guys know what the Rat Queens is if you know my Instagram. $3 for the archive of for the Patreon. And all those links are on my link tree in the description below this video.
I'm pretty psyched for that trade paperback.
Yeah, I can't wait to get one in your hands.
It's been fun seeing it come together behind the scenes. You can join me on Patreon at patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can download my out-of-print zines and mini-comics, and you can see a lot of my original art and how I make the comics I make, like Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive, which is available wherever you buy comics, online or in brick-and-mortar stores everywhere. And on my Patreon, you can see side-by-side comparisons of layouts, scripts, basically the process I go through to make these comics, and pretty much what we do here on Cartoonist Kayfabe, but applied to the comics that I make, like Street Angel, Plain Jane's, Octobriana, and so much more. You can get all of that at patreon.com/JimRugg. But the name of today's game is Adam Warren, man. Adam Warren, who we all knew from Dirty Pair, one of the American artists who really kind of brought in the manga style and you know, applied it to comics that we could find at comic book shops before it was really a popular thing to do. Comes out of the Joe Kubert school, which we were talking about a little bit leading up to this episode, and it's interesting. Obviously from the 80s, you know, in the Joe Kubert school, he starts working in the mid-80s in comics. So coming through the Joe Kubert school, it seemed like there was a manga vein that these guys were maybe searching out, looking for cutting-edge comics. And a few people, Tim Tyler's another guy who comes out of that Kubert school era in the 80s and does Manga Monthly as one of his first self-published books. So I love the idea that these students are there and they're not just learning from Joe Kubert, but they're looking for what's new and exciting and, you know, probably sharing that with each other, much like we have done over the years with whatever we find that we think looks cool.
It's fun to think about that, giving the lineage of the school, because you think about like the first generation Kubert students, it would have been Metal Hurlant that would have been out, and then heavy metal comes out while the kids are in school. Joe Kubert already knows Mobius. Like, there are those, like, Tick Attack, yes, or whatever it's called. Those videos where Mobius and Joe Kubert, Neil Adams drawn on one big board all at the same time or whatever, man. So, you know, that's Mach 1 Kubert school. You got your 80s students fucking with manga and shit. Lucky me that in 2000, everybody's looking at Mike Turner.
Love these covers, by the way. Like, Adam Warren was a strong cartoonist.
Here's the deal, man. Like, the dude, a lot of people who lean into the kind of like Amera manga kind of vibe, it's a crutch for lack of drawing ability. For Adam Warren, he is absolutely a drawer.
Yes.
Like, he is a fantastic illustrator. He knows where everything goes when it comes to constructing the human figure. This is a choice. This is a very, very deliberate choice on his part to adopt that flavor, to adopt that energy. And he, as we continue our Wizard coverage, it begins Brutes and Babes, Bart Sears, segues into Greg Capullo, Drop in Science, And then when Greg Capullo goes away, it's Adam Warren who's given you drawing lessons. And if you go to his Instagram right now, it's been a little while since I've been there, but there was so much of it on there when I last saw that I bet he's still just doing the same stuff, where he is just, it's like the Gil Kane 1 hour a day wood shedding figure drawing stuff, where he's intimately aware of the human figure.
It's amazing to think of those two comparatively, because like with Adam Warren, one thing I think of is how dynamic his figures are. Like, figures are just flying around all the time, and you need the figure drawing chops in order to be able to really do that and make it look good. And of course, you know, Gil Kane, the other guy who really has that figure drawing kind of stuff down pat.
He's also the dude like he and Brandon Graham on Publicly Online going back and forth, like where Brandon Graham's like, fuck tangents, who cares about tangents? And Adam Warren saw that and was like, no, like tangents are awful.
That feels like something he might have picked up at the Kubert School.
Yeah, sure.
I can remember working with my first editor, Shelley Bond, and tangents were a thing that, you know, the editors would be circling and pointing out. So it was something that was definitely, I think, bred into a certain group of us artists, you know, one way or the other. So the story starts, you know, this is the late 90s, and there's a lot of Tarantino influence in this. You know, movies, something that becomes almost dialogue driving pop culture in a lot of ways after that, and you can feel that sense. But this is really like kung fu movies is what we're referencing here.
Hong Kong flicks,
and you can see him like the subtitles on these movies that they're watching in this kung fu marathon that Grunge is just loving it, man. This is right up his alley. But he comes out of there convinced that, you know, he could make a movie like this. He could make a good one.
Just like everybody, well, not every, just like many people who are watching the videos and saying, like, I could do better comics than that.
Well, this one's pretty well done. This is a cool series, too. This, you know, we've talked about Gen 13 being kind of a runaway success for Wildstorm and really a popular breakout title, and they come up with this Bootleg series where like different artists get to come in and apply their style to these characters, which I love as a fan, seeing the different interpretations. And Adam Warren's, you know, quite different than what we're used to and what we're seeing from Wildstorm style artists.
And don't worry, kids, because this comic, it doesn't abuse canon of Gen 13.
That's true.
That's the whole conceit of Bootleg. And like, I think one of the hallmarks of this series that sort of set it apart was that it just had some personality. It had 3% of personality compared to like any of the other Wildstorm Studios books.
All the Wildstorm books are this, right? They're dark action movie, anti-hero kind of stuff. And these are kids that are sort of trying to have fun in between the adventure part of it. And it was very different.
Yeah, get a 2-page piece where they say something with some modern pop culture, like, you know, PlayStation reference or something. And then you get, you know, just 20 pages of people crawling around through rafters, shooting guns and stuff like that, man. The cel-shaded color... this is some of the first that I've seen in comics on Adam Warren. Certainly, once again, another choice. Trying to capture that vibe of
on this, do you know?
No, trying to capture that vibe of like anime flicks.
Credits may be at the end of this, but remind me to look, because I do like the coloring. You know, I think it really shows up well on Roxy. I love this panel too, where Roxy's like, "Don't you need to go to film school or have some experience to direct a movie?" And just laughing in her face, which feels like a very manga moment. You know, that kind of funny reaction type shot. And so he starts going through some of his ideas for this. And one of the fun gimmicks in this is making fun of subtitles. So a lot of the quotes that you'll see in the dialogue, I believe, are pulled from actual kung fu movie subtitles.
I never thought that I would say this, man, but there should be like an Alan Moore or Chester Brown level set of annotations for a Gen 13 comic, because you just know this guy, he ain't playing when it comes to his interest in Hong Kong flicks. And you just know that, like I internalize and I can recite a lot of words, like lines from the movies that I like. There's so much weird shit in here that you just know he and his friends, like,
completely
crack up at.
Probably his schoolmates too at Kubert School.
Oh, I've been there, yeah.
And he's cutting promos, man. Like, she's talking about, well, what's the story? Don't you need a good storyline? And he's like, doesn't matter. Having a story, let alone a good one, is strictly optional nowadays. Independence Day sure proved that.
That's the other thing with Gen 13. Like this fully roots it in the time period that it came out with. Twister references, PlayStation, product placement was finally brought out of the shadows and like had a name at this time, you know? So that was like something that would be talked about a lot when it was just kind of more subtle.
And here we go, man. He's telling her the story. So this is where the Gen 13 characters are going to populate his movie plans.
This is the days of film. So very wise kind of gutter technique by having the kind of sprocket holes of your film.
Love the total ego trip of he's doing everything. It's his production, his film, starring him, story and screenplay by him. And there's some of your product placement right away. Subway, PlayStation, Coke.
Jimmy, this was a blast to read, man.
It's really fun. It's really fun. And in the late 90s, like, you couldn't say that about that many comics.
This is super sad right here, dude. Like, when he talks about Scott Weiland, Chris Cornell, like, both of those guys are young and no longer with us already, man. And, you know, I don't think either one of them got to be 50 years old.
Man, I didn't even put that together. Yeah, you're right. Wow. And, you know, within the comic, it's just killing off the other dude that's part of the Gen 13
You're right. Yeah, so you can have all the girls.
right off the bat. Oh, and of course there's gonna be ninjas.
Fox Force 5, baby.
Fantastic. Yeah. Appearing suddenly and without warning or even an establishing shot. The meta elements of this are part of what make it so much fun.
Like, what movie do they say this? Because, you know, he didn't make that up, I don't think. I don't think he made these quotes up.
No. Again, I think it's the indicative of the lines that are in quotes, I think, are the ones that are really being pulled from actual movie sources. And, you know, he even has Grunge saying it. I'm a major fan of the weird phrases that pop up in the cheapo English subtitles of Hong Kong films. So, you know, as we get further into this movie, you bastard, try this melon. You know, these things are definitely, at least they read that way. He also does this technique, which is, I see a lot of people like
Daniel Warren
Johnson, big fan of his work. And I see him do this kind of technique for motion where, like, you know, you'll have one line essentially in focus. It's almost like a film technique or something where you have depth of field, but in this case, it's motion lines. How do you do the motion?
Yeah.
And this is pretty early use of that technique.
One of the things that Adam Warren talked about, like in the Wizard columns, was the motion. That was like one of his tutorials. And one of the things that I like the most, can you go back to where it introduces the 5, where the use of the French curve as blast lines or whatever, like, so there would be like the vanishing point here,
right?
And I was trying to think, like, how would you do that properly? Like, would you have to like put a mark or something, like a little piece of tape on your French curve to make sure that it stays like lined up properly to make it feel right?
Make a mental note of this, because at some point I'm going to do a French curve video, and this is something that I'm confident I can replicate.
Yeah,
I love it. I didn't notice it, and I haven't seen this much, because besides the French curve part, which is really cool and a good use for like a film thing too, you know, it reminds me of like a fisheye lens where like your speed lines are warping around the edges, but it also, like, it's overlapping the figures. You know, you think of like this as an old Silver Age kind of thing in Marvel Comics. Those lines are always behind the figures. You're never seeing them come in front. It's a really awesome panel.
But you do in manga, certainly not white or whatever, but you definitely see those lines. Like,
and by the way, talking about him as a drawer is a reflection of buildings in a pool that they're, you know, sitting on the edge of, and like your different bricks and stone sidewalk and then stone around your fountain. That's a lot of drawing at a time when people weren't necessarily doing a lot of drawing.
More sprocket holes so that you know you're in the film.
Yes. And Mike Zeck and Stephen Grant doing an image book. I remember buying this and being surprised by Zeck's art. Something that maybe is worth a look at some point, because it's a crime comic. You know, like, once Frank Miller and Sin City made crime comics a viable genre again, a lot of people jumped on those and did some cool stuff.
Good spread here.
Yeah, dense pages, but very readable.
But the fact that like oh yeah, you're right. We need to gussy up these costumes for the American audience, man. And you got the same image.
Fun with sound effects. When the tree falls, the monkeys run. Man, I think by issue 3, it's nothing but those quotes.
Got to get Fairchild in the game.
Yes, wearing next to nothing, by the way.
And that's a joke that's going to play over and over again here, man, where you get your page reveals. There it is, man.
Eye gouge. That's amazing, too. He even sets it up storytelling-wise. Panel before and moment of action.
Yeah, and the joke is used several times about the big, honking, massive eyeballs.
Got to aim for him. Can't hardly miss. Yeah, it looks like Warren is having a ball with this story, and that helps me too as a reader. I feel like that stuff comes across if you're really into it, or conversely if you're not. I mean, how often do you look at a comic and it looks like nobody gave a shit about this comic?
Absolutely. Yeah, more often than not. I mean that's where the jobber term comes from, man, because it's just like you're cashing checks.
It's a fun conceit. Some more of these, I think those are straight. It looks like those aren't the French curve lines, but some more of the interesting, like, I don't know what effect that is, but it's such a it's a twist on what we would see here in the American version of that kind of zoom effect. The big boss finding the clue along the way, and end of Act 1 here for this story, right? The revelation of what's to come and where they need to head to get their payback. All exploitation issue. Once again, man, these things hold up from cover to cover.
He draws good tech, like very well referenced. I think that was a tutorial guide in Wizard magazine. See, it's like always on the page reveals too. This is where you see this stuff where it's like he's not just drawing in a kind of quote unquote manga style because it's a dodge for learning how to draw for real, quote unquote. This is a extremely well constructed figure. Everything fits like a glove. Every piece of muscle. Yeah, and you can even see it in the way he's drawing this interior of this fast food restaurant. It's a different perspective in every one of these background shots, and relatively small panels to cram in a relatively detailed background. Yeah, the characters are standing in perspective properly. But this is great. This is totally an exploitation movie. You got to have a shower scene and some product placement in the middle of that. We call that a running joke in the business. Nice lettering. We're often criticizing lettering in this era of digital lettering. Taking advantage of it, making a really great page, almost a shoujo reference, the way this page is laid out. Specifically Sailor Moon's tuxedo mask. I saw a show of shoujo art in Denmark the one time, and it was phenomenal seeing those pages. And once again, can draw anything. He's drawing a soda machine. What a strange era. More of our exploitation imagery. Always on that page turn, like this Adam Warren is a thinking cartoonist, man. Is this an Adam Hughes reference right here? Was Adam Hughes signing his shit that way at that time? It's gotta be around then, because he had done a Gen 13, I think, a bootleg Adam Hughes, maybe the first one. That's fun. Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't think about that. What's fun too is like the skateboard shirt, like all the attire is like from Pacific Sunwear, man. You got the hookups, sneakers, and shit like that. Yeah, it's amazing stuff. And here come the Men in Black Wildcats showing up, coming from the big boss. This is such a good conceit too, to be able to use all the Wildstorm characters as different characters in his movie. And there's your hardware. Agreed, man. I think of Gunsmith Cats. That was one of the mangas that I got into early on, and it was super cartoonish except for the guns and the cars, right. And they were like photo-realistic, straight amazing traced drawing. It's incredible. Wetworks showing up behind the Wildcats. Got to, man. Look at that blade maul. Guns, you think I'm meaning puppy? Get it? It's the annotated version. Yes, where is that? You won't die in one piece. That's a pretty good quote. And he's so good with all of these compositions. They're just dynamic as hell. And backlash. Some of your deeper cuts now. This is almost shades of Matrix, a couple years early. Absolutely. Diving and shooting, crisscrossing the hands as they shoot. And I mean, that's Hong Kong films. Yes. That's Chow Yun Fat shits. Yeah, I was going to say John Woo, but yep, any of these high-end action movies. He mentioned Sammo Hung in one of the things. And in the Piss Score house, my dad would always call him Sam Hungalo. That's
so good. That's like stupid.
Right.
Yeah, you can almost picture these in those movies, right? The slow motion of the gun bouncing up into his hand just in time. And fun crossing between the movie scenes and the very calm, they're out having lunch and discussing this. And this is what's raging in his brain is behind that smug smile.
The dialogue is still something it's just so timely.
This feels like a Sin City nod.
Oh,
the big blam panels and then a black and white.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Once again, like it feels like he's just having fun and figured out a way to put everything he wants to draw into this script. Juggling guns.
Yeah. Yeah, we skipped the part, I think, where dudes are holding guns all weird, and there was one guy who held the gun sideways, one guy who held it upside down, and another guy who held it without even using the hand grip, and he pulls the trigger with his tongue.
Oh, we got to find that, Ed.
Just a previous page, I think. Maybe it's in the last one.
I think this is the all.
Yeah. Pulls it with his pinky.
So stupid.
That one right there is just obscene.
Love it. Got to have your mini helicopter gun. I saw a guy with a shirt this past weekend with just the mini helicopter gun and like the name under it.
The name of the gun?
Yeah.
We do live in Pennsylvania, people.
Oh, man.
Or were you in Florida? Because
that was actually Florida.
Yeah,
that was a Florida sighting.
That makes sense as well.
Yeah, man, the gun culture in Florida is alarming. I think this is my favorite cover of this batch. It's a little bit, I think, more, I know I get ridiculed for saying dynamic too much, but the different scale of figures, having that more exaggerated scale adds to the the depth of the cover. But I love the Hot Wheel tracks, car tracks, is like what they're being tied up with and stuff.
And you need this character in the foreground because it's unclear what this is just looking at these girls. It's
yes.
like what is that? And then when you see the Hot Wheels on that thing, you clearly realize it's like, slot car.
And this kind of point of view shot where you're the big boss essentially in this image is like the slasher movies, that subjective point of view.
Right.
So really getting you involved. It's almost giving you a third layer where you're the actual third layer of it. So fist in your face finale. Here we go. Continuing to wrap up the story now. It's Act 3 time, man. They're going to confront the big boss at his headquarters.
Yeah, man.
And how do they do it? Disguise them as product placement Domino pizza delivery
with
people.
The titties on the pizza box, man.
What do you want on your pizza?
Pepperonis, baby.
She's so mad about it. And even doing like the ass shot, coming and going. Which is probably Michael Bay's taking notes whenever he's seeing this. Like the video games are fun too in the background. And here we go, Lynch making his appearance. The Wildstorm staple. The hero. So dumb. Noodles, forget it. Try my fist. Great punches. This effect where there's like that, almost like the wind or what, the air in between the fist and the face. Really love it. And I think this is probably all straight out of manga, but very dynamic. Like you think of like Kirby fight scenes and kind of that traditional bombastic American fight scene. This is a very different feeling.
It was really cool when they started to implement that in the Japanese flicks like Shaolin Soccer and stuff like that, where you like see the Hadoukens.
Yes. And again, continuing with the fun sound effects. There's a lot happening on these pages. Even pixelating your video game screen.
Oh yeah, man.
I wonder, like, with that kind of stuff, like, does he have a hand in that? Is he directing the colorist? Is he doing it himself? Some of these effects?
It seems like it. Because you have all these other Wildstorm books that are so fucking cookie cutter and generic and boring as hell.
You know what? That's the other note is how colorful this stuff is.
Yeah.
In an age when everything is browned out, like, these are really bright pages.
Gen 13 was like that, too. That was, like, another thing that made it feel different. It was a good collaboration with Garner... J. Scott Campbell, I think maybe Joe Chiodo in a color.
Yeah, he was a good colorist. I don't know if that's the main guy or not, but definitely a guy whose coloring I enjoyed. And Grunge turned into beer to recharge himself. Little drunken master kind of referencing.
When he drew the Drunken Master pose in issue 1, like I know the exact like Jackie Chan pose that he was like referencing for that one.
And it's fun to see the video game stuff entering into the into the comic as they're playing the video games and talking about this movie.
Makes perfect sense, man.
Totally.
It's some exact those exact Neo Geo King of Fighters type joints too.
Absolutely. Chugging beer makes total sense with that grunge character. He's such a bro kind of character.
Just a bimbo. David Cho was like, Jim.
This is hilarious too, for putting a timestamp on this.
David Cho was like, Jim, you're Korean, and you had a chance to like create the Korean hero, but you make him a fucking bimbo too? Like, what is that?
Yeah, imagine giving David Cho a run on this.
I mean, he said it on our shoot interview.
Yeah.
So it's not talking out of school. Let's see, there's that Drunken Master type pose.
Yeah, and the lettering even reflecting that, right? It's so much fun. Like, it's such close attention to detail. It's hard for me not to believe Adam Warren's got his hands all over those choices.
Absolutely.
Because they're so good.
And it's just so different. Like, we were looking at some like Battle Chasers, and the font was all small on everything and hard to read. Like,
yeah, you mentioned Jobbers, a minute ago, and like part of that is just you're doing a small part of the process and handing it off, and whatever happens. This is the opposite of that, even though it's still in that kind of an assembly line system, but it is caring about all these details, and if you get them right, like, they help. The lettering helps. It reinforces what the art is doing.
Yeah, and his name is above the he gets top billing, so you got to make that shit right, man. And then the way that they Chekhov's haystack, right? Like it was established earlier.
Yes, Roxy was unsure of why the hay was there,
and he's like, "This is called foreshadowing," and it was FOUR shadowing because you have to show it 4 times before it pays off. Well, here we go, man.
Yeah, and again, continuing with all of these hilarious subtitles and Twister reference.
Yeah, man. They said it could have been a big dinosaur, so there's Jurassic Park references. But the Twister creates the opportunity where you could send little thickets of hay through our antagonist's face.
Ridiculous.
Like
this
bullets.
Was such a classic. Like, I was so afraid of tornadoes as a kid, and this was the kind of thing you would hear about, is how it could drive a piece of straw through a telephone pole.
Oh, yeah, man. Like, referenced really well in some episodes of Beavis and Butthead at the time.
And doesn't even bother to untie the heroines that he rescues at the end, just walking away with them in bondage. She so hates this movie idea a lot.
But you see, it's still like the film construct, right? So this is a deliberate choice when you flip the script.
It's that fourth wall montage, breaking the fourth wall.
And then, she does the good girlfriend gimmick, man, which is potentially the bad girlfriend thing, man, where it's enabling.
Yeah. This is what you need, though. You need the 2 thumbs up at the end of your big epic plans that are never going to happen. Doesn't hurt to give a nod, a little encouragement. Joe Rosas on colors. I wanted to mention the colorist because I do appreciate the coloring in this one a lot. I don't know what to say about this. For all the books that we look at in the 90s, Divine Right coming out at this time, it really stands out. I didn't read this at the time. This is something that I've picked up recently, and I'm kind of amazed by how good it is, although Adam Warren then takes over writing Gen 13 for a long run.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I think it must, stem from this issue, or this storyline, is my guess.
Yeah, he handles the material well. This was a ball to read. First time I read it, so happy I did. It makes me curious about more Adam Warren comics. I just never really looked at that stuff when it was coming out. Always gave mad props, mad respect for his drawing acumen and shit. But this story is fun. I love that he was able to get a lot of his kind of nerdiness on the page. I think there's an infectious quality to that. He's clearly having a ball, and it resonates off the page, which, man, if you could just give a shot in the arm to 100% of comic creators to do that, man, like, it could be one of those elements that, helps revitalize a medium that is selling less and less.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Ed, that, leaning into kind of his passions, his nerdy excess, whatever you want to call it. You just don't see that very often. And a lot of my favorite comics do reflect that, But man, to apply it to like, this was a work for hire gig. So to apply that kind of personal, your favorite stuff into this kind of a work for hire arrangement, man, tip of the hat. Well done, Adam Warren.
And well said, Jimmy. Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell. Will notify you when new vids are available. What's out there, man?
Join me on patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can download my zines and out-of-print mini comics. You can see my original art, my processes from script to finished pages, and a lot more on patreon.com/JimRugg.
Red Room Comics in the wild. 4 issues of the Antisocial Network on the stands as we speak, and they are selling out rapidly. So if you miss one, grab the trade paperback coming in early November 2021. You can get these comics at my link tree in the description below this video. Or if you want to keep reading Red Room Comics before the work hits paper, it's serialized on my Patreon, patreon.com/EdPiscor. All these links are on my link tree in the description below this video. What else, man?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe e-newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts and merchandise at the links below this video.
Give them those merch orders and we'll be on our way. I'm so curious to hear what you're going to say, Jimmy.
Read more comics.
Not manga?